I haven't talked about this for a long time. I usually just behind the scenes observe and watch. But what I'm talking about here is the phenomena of the First Amendment auditors, as they can be categorized broadly. Right? So this is just a general term for the people who basically you'll see videos all over YouTube, TikTok, and various other places of individuals recording in public on sidewalks and other public easements and in public facilities. And very often you will have escalations where people will come up and start questioning why they're recording. And a lot of times people get violent. They threaten to call the police, and often do. And people just get really upset about the First Amendment auditors. Now, if you don't understand why I'm calling them First Amendment auditors, it's because their right to record in public is covered under the First Amendment, the right to free speech, for journalism, and so on and so forth. So now, let me just skip to over all of that and why this is important, though. It's unquestionable that this is a right that people have, regardless of how people's feelings, right? People are talking about, I don't like it, I don't feel good, I don't want you to. None of that matters. And it actually is way less important than the United States Constitution, which I believe and understand and have experienced that, not just belief, but just know from experience, from education, meaning reading the United States Constitution, speaking to lawyers, speaking to law enforcement, that the First Amendment auditors are actually doing a very important public service for every American citizen, because of the fact that behind closed doors and unawares to most people, while most people are asleep and have no idea what's going on, many rights of American citizens are being taken away. They're being eroded. They're being stolen and trampled all over. And this is a terrible thing because the way that they're upheld in the first place is done very poorly to begin with. So in what's happening with unscrupulous politicians or others who would rather not have a free people are working to amend the laws in their favor so that we don't have free speech, so that we don't have the right to protest, so that we don't have these various different rights that basically hold our elected officials and other public servants accountable. And this is why this is very important. And, you know, just like an analogy I will use is an analogy from The Matrix. Whereas, you know, basically there are people in The Matrix who will defend the prison that they're in. And this is what you see, this is what is actually happening when people are becoming violent with the First Amendment auditors, these people who are filming and photographing in public, right, is that basically they have, for various different reasons, they are defending their own imprisonment. They are contributing to the erosion of our rights and freedoms as citizens of the United States of America, which I've been saying as American citizens. I do understand that there are 3 Americas at least, right? North, Central, and South. But as a United States of American citizen on the North American continent, we have various different rights and privileges that, if they are not expressed and if people are not educated about them, will be taken away little by little, and we will be left with nothing. And the problem with this is that this is one of the reasons why so many people who are supposed to protect and serve, specifically more emphasis should be put on the serve part, get away with a lot of the things that they do. And I would especially address underserved and underrepresented communities, the so-called minorities, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, people who don't have a lot of resources, people who are living in poverty, uneducated, basically what are also known as marginalized peoples, are the ones that also need to be more educated about this, because and need to leave the auditors alone. Because let's just take some very specific examples. We have a lot of people who protest and riot and are very upset about one specific issue. For example, police brutality, or when they feel that police officers are overstepping their authority, they're violating the public trust, right? And one of the reasons why this can happen and pretty much go unchecked, remember, I'm not making this a blanket statement, right? One of the reasons why this goes unchecked and why this is a problem is because you have the oppression and suppression of our rights and freedoms, constitutional rights and freedoms, that are not being upheld, that are not being recognized, because people are fighting to remain imprisoned, as I've been talking about, right? You have people going out and attacking people with cameras, and asking, why are you filming me, and just really getting, I mean, it's wild how emotional people get. It's as if some programming has taken over their brains, and they're just they are losing it. I mean, they are crashing out, and many of these people don't realize, some of them, especially some of those who need to stay away from this kind of behavior, don't realize that they're actually hurting themselves, and that they are contributing to the persistence, the perpetuation of certain things, specifically such as police brutality. And a lot of people don't understand that. But the more rights that are taken away, and the less accountable public servants and other elected officials can be held. They can't be held accountable the more our rights are taken away, because the closer you move towards tyrannical fascist regimes and forms of government, meaning the less rights we have, then the less recourse, the less ground you have to stand on when you want to complain about these things, or when you want to fight against them, because you no longer have anything written and accepted by the general public to protect you. And this is very, very important. This is something that a lot of people do not understand why it's so important. One of the things I see a lot I've just been looking at these TikTok videos. One of the things that you'll see a lot are people posting clown images, clown memes of clowns with cameras. And they're basically taking a jab at the First Amendment auditors. And they're calling them clowns because they see that they're out there in public and people are getting bent out of shape about it, and not taking the time to think and have the awareness that they're not in the wrong. Now you can say whatever you want about how it's impolite, how people don't want you to, how privacy this and that, but that actually doesn't matter as much as your rights as a free, democratically living American citizen, a citizen of the United States of America. And especially because of the fact that it's almost that cameras, surveillance cameras, are becoming nearly ubiquitous, or however you want, if you like to pronounce it, ubiquitous, right? But are nearly ubiquitous in the world now. There was some time I heard many years ago, at least over 10 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, that there were more cameras in the United Kingdom and England than there were people. Like there were like 14 cameras per person, or maybe the number 14 came up. Maybe it was like there were 14 million. It was some ridiculous number that I'm not sure, because I haven't checked lately on the demographics of the population of England, but the fact that there were way more cameras than people. I'll have to check on that again, and you should too. You should check on those numbers. But that's, it's an interesting thing that so many people are being surveilled all the time. I mean, we have dash cams, we have surveillance cams, and when you go to pump your gas, you walk into any convenience store, you go into all these different places, and you're being filmed, and you don't, and no one complains about that. And people also don't stop to think about how many crazy, perverted weirdos have access to those cameras and are probably doing things with that information that they shouldn't be doing, whereas the constitutional auditors or First Amendment auditors are posting this stuff online and are being way more transparent than almost every single one of these other organizations, institutions, and businesses that are collecting this visual and other data. So it is really a very sad state of affairs how most people's attitudes are about this and how they want to claim privacy while being out in public. You have no right or expectation of privacy when you are in the public. Anything that can be seen, recorded, photographed from the public is not private. You have no right, nor should you have any expectation of privacy. And you need to learn that. You must be educated about that and proceed accordingly. And it's really a reflection on the miseducation and the uneducated state of many citizens of the United States of America. It reflects poorly on our educational system that mandates in many ways for students in classrooms to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance to a flag that is supposed to represent the rights and freedoms that we have, yet is seldom upheld, especially when it comes to law enforcement and other elected officials and public servants. And so you think that you're being patriotic, but the least patriotic people, through ignorance and being uneducated, the least patriotic people are those who are getting bent out of shape and are attacking these auditors because they simply have no idea what their rights and freedoms and privileges are, or else they wouldn't be doing that, and don't realize that their ignorance and their lack of education is actually a major contributing factor to the eroding freedoms and rights and privileges that we have as citizens of the United States of America. A country that has enough flaws already as it is, just like any other place does, but you're not doing any good for your rights and freedoms and being protected under these laws that we have agreed to as a consensus, being part of this country. They're being taken away more and more, and you are doing a disservice to yourself and everyone else by continuing your lack of education and your outrage against people with cameras. Just because, there are people all the time. I go shopping all the time in various different locations. I'm in places all the time, and I walk by offices where people are sitting down and watching people on cameras all the time, and no one has a problem with that. But because it's their job, well, a lot of these independent, constitutional, First Amendment auditors have made that their job. They're self-employed, and they have found various different ways to monetize their activities, which also is a public service and is also helping to educate many people. A lot of people are getting educated. I just actually watched two people who attacked auditors with cameras, and other people around them were cheering that on and thinking that that was okay, and then got educated when the people who carried out the attacks ended up getting put in handcuffs after they got maced and sprayed in the face with pepper spray or whatever. And everybody else thought that the people with the cameras were going to get arrested, and it was the completely opposite. And those people must be experiencing some crazy cognitive dissonance. They must not understand what's going on there, but they're educated. They got educated right there. And it makes me wonder if those people will ever repeat that stupid behavior again, that ignorant, vile behavior that has been drilled into them, that they think that for some reason people shouldn't be recording them. And it's really, really ridiculous. And, it also is one thing to say, too, about a lot of people who are bullies, because whenever I've been out with my camera recording, whenever I've recorded anytime, no one ever comes up to me because of the way that I look. Which is funny. People don't come up to me and say anything for the most part. And I don't want to jinx myself, but I don't do it a lot. But never in the times that I have. And, Flora and I, we have professional grade cameras. I mean, she's gone now, but I have her camera still. And, we'd be out all over Fort Lauderdale, California, all kinds of places just photographing. And no one ever came to me because, I guess to them I look dangerous. And that's the thing. People are bullies out there. Y'all are fascist bullies, tyrannical bullies that you want to step to these people because they don't look like they can do anything. And that's why you get maced in the face. That's why you get pepper spray in your eye and then think that something's going to happen to the person who did it to you. Well, you shouldn't be attacking them. Don't touch people. Stay away from them. Maybe you should be a little bit more curious about what's going on. So I just need to address that. I mean, the main points here are that, one, that they go by various names, but the constitutional auditors, the First Amendment auditors, they are actually doing a public service by educating people. And if these people have to be educated by getting pepper sprayed in the face and then getting arrested, well, they're learning. And unfortunately, have to learn the hard way. But I uphold that they are doing a great service for education and for making people aware of the rights and privileges that we have, especially the First Amendment, the number one that we have, which is one of the foundations, the bedrock that this country was built on. And the language was as it was because that's why we have so many groups that were marginalized before, specifically slaves, who now have these same rights and privileges because it was written in the way that it was. Because those people who came over from Europe were leaving to escape their own type of oppression because they weren't allowed to speak out against the church and certain things like that. And so they understood when they wrote those things down in the Constitution, signed and put into effect in 1776, they made sure that it has been written in a way now where everyone is protected under those rights and freedoms that were put in force way back at a time when not everybody had access to those. And now everybody does. And so they are doing, these auditors, these First Amendment auditors, these constitutional auditors, they are doing a service to us to help remind us of those rights and privileges that we have as citizens of the United States of America. And you need to be educated about that. If you think there's something wrong with what those people are doing, there's something wrong with the way that you've been educated. I am Hakeem Ali-Bocas Alexander.